Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's reports for the 9th of September. Well, we're starting to get some action going into what I would call the post-holiday period for summer break, and probably most likely on Monday that when everyone is completely back, we'll start to see some more action. But you can see with this white NBI reading 946, anything above that 8, really start to get interested in short activity, at least something like these little dips. The critical aspect at that point, once you get the crossover of white over red, is the white over magenta to really solidify that it's a bit more of a run than just casual passing by. But we've had this falling shakeout. We had the DOC spread that began, well, at the peak of it, it was the beginning of what we could see as the rollover, which was right back over here. And then it progressed from there. And that became the critical one. So that was right at the beginning of the month. And it took a little while for it to finally roll over on the red DOC. We still had a steel reset. So that's what's been holding up quite nicely. But now, as we always talk about, above the ABM, you maintain long, but below it, which is where we're at now, you've got that pressure on the upside. So the ABM is now down to 4503. And that's what we'll be watching. Of course, you have the other ones below. Obviously, it's 76% Morganacci, which pretty much coincides with the ABM green as well. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. So, most excitement we've had in quite a while when you think about it, even from the NASDAQ. You look at how long a span these have been with the white NBI well below 10 in most cases, and just allowing for those huge uptrends, which we capture well with the VPAR and that. NASDAQ still stronger, but expressing a little bit of softness as well, but did too. Now, in this case, the ABM much higher because it's between the 76 and 100%, but it's much closer to the top peak there. So not a whole lot of range between it, but it gives a nice span between that 176 to be able to play off and utilize. And of course, it created its DOC spread a little bit later than the S&P, which is an indication that tech is still holding things, at least the broader market, up. And a little bit of softness from gold that we talked about before as this peaked up, and this is exactly what you would look at the daily. You'd expect exactly what this is doing, falling when you get that crossover of white where you have magenta and yellow below the 33 and continuing to fall. The key is there you see white starting to flatten out there. The yellow flattening out, and you see the orange pivot, the magenta one right here, pivot, you'd have a better chance of a turnaround. But as long as that white's above magenta, continuation to the downside. That's what we look for. And we combine that with the DOC and we get a guaranteed move. So it's interesting. Almost every market looking identical here when we look at these configurations of the white crossing here in this case, and the same decline, same DOC spread separation. I always like it when we get DOC green and cyan meeting each other, because whenever you get that break, you're going to have a bigger momentum play to it, and that's what's nice to know. Bitcoin, 60-minute chart here. It had its peak. Nice plays with the. This is the Opus T. Studies. Strategy Opus T2, and pretty straightforward with this. Go ahead and look at the performance report. I was putting the information up on the Skype chat, but can't hurt to always show it in more than one place. And from a general, what I always thought was interesting about this one in particular is the short side making double what the long side is. And I think that really is a reflection of how powerful it is when algorithms got into putting cryptocurrencies in the form of ETFs and or just even placing them as far as futures contracts. It's really going to have a significant play because the big players make more on the downside usually than they will on the upside plays, because they can bet against the population. All most people can do with Bitcoin, if you're actually buying it, is just buy it and then sell it. You can't actually short it like you can with these instruments, and that's what makes this so much more powerful, at least from an opportunity standpoint. 5K, running the new Opus that would send out with the new indicators, and it's quite nice. I mean, we started off with a little bit of the dip there, went by at 44.94. The program wanted out at 45.03. Then it shorted again at 45.04. That one didn't produce as much. I mean, it still had a nice move, but it was just a couple of points. And that was what I like to see about that, is it caught it on the turnaround. But it did capture this one, 45.05 to 44.87. So that was a pretty good move. Had an additional short right there. Turnaround on this one, not as attractive for the program on the long side, simply because you had that quick turnaround with red writing above magenta. Sometimes doesn't produce very long runs. And in this case, it produced a little bit longer run, but ended up doing exactly the same thing. The unfortunate one that I'm looking at more was the cover on this setup, because we still had weight over magenta, so I have to find out why that decided to short there. It may have been the cross of the green DOC. So I'll take a look at that one, because theoretically that should have just held on to it and captured this full run. So this, the little adjustments that still need to be made. I don't even know if this, from a 5K standpoint, it's on the profit side. We can take a look at that. I hadn't intended to use it on 5K just yet. Yeah, decent. Still, with those win rates, definitely can be improved. And again, I haven't optimized any of these setups. What I did create, and what I wanted to show, is on the 50K, where you see me putting up the performance report. I wanted to show you the inputs that go with it, and changes that I've made to it. Shrink that just a fraction, because this is looking pretty good from a long and short standpoint. I mean, 2.69, 1.64, those are excellent. There's no current trade, so I don't need that part of it. Decent from an RNI index. This is just measuring, what I liked was the amount of time in the market, 72% of the time. And looking at, fairly consistent equity graph that certainly is easily improved within its current setups. I think that's exciting from that standpoint. So to get to our inputs, edit strategies, and in this case, the Opus T, just customize. Something you'll need to make sure that you do, click properties for all, and you'll want to make sure bars back that you have at least, I use 70, but a minimum of 60 in order for it to operate. Otherwise, you'll get an error that says that it needs to reference more bars back than available. You can see I turn short trades on with a 1. I turn cyan off with a 0. Now, what you get in further down, the most stops, and that aren't on there any longer, so not critical, but fail stop ATR, that's like a catch-all just in case. That's easily optimized. If you're going to optimize, I would optimize that by itself. Doesn't really happen too often now because we've got most of the longs and shorts covered. And then what you get is a series of these readings that are certainly adjustable, because basically what we've done is on some of these, like the extreme value, that's the extreme histogram, and whether or not -15 versus a -18, depending on the chart you're using, time frame, may need to rise or fall. Quicker the time frame, the bigger the dip will be. So if you run this on a 5K, that may not be deep enough. You may need to be down to 25 or 35. Those kinds of things. Same thing with the white MBI and that. So that gives the flexibility. And this goes through each of the different buy configurations. and even does the stops down below. So each one of these sections has similar names, but like they'll add a 1 to it, and that lets you know that it's just a different trade. And that way you can do them in combinations. Then, of course, you've named the GAM ones so that you would know which one the GAM. Now the GAM, I have to do some work on the exit for that one because some of them tend to run a little bit long. And when you have green up in that, those are the pivots for like the MBI, blue, and green, just from a relevance standpoint. And then we get into some of these that will activate after a number of closes. So this one, you know, on a shorter time frame, like a 5K, you may want more bars before it kicks in, but on like a 50K, probably the number should even be lower, maybe like 4 or 5, then it activates the sell parameters. So it's a little bit interesting. So that way, when you get some of that, sometimes when the trade starts to go sideways, and like the ABM would catch up to it, this kind of prevents that because it wouldn't activate until it gets up there. And then you get into the stops and the shorts. So you have 2 shorts. You have the red short and you have the SH short. And so that separates each of those. And each of those can be optimized really per the type of security. And I think that gives some pretty powerful adjustments. I haven't really had an opportunity to do that. So give you something to play with. As always, though, I will keep working away at these and update you on any relevant changes to them. Trade well. We'll talk again later.